All right, the big story this morning has been the news of Christian Atsu. The Ghana international, we're told, is still yet to be found, despite reports a couple of days ago, including from the Ghana Football Association, that he had been found, rescued, and is in hospital being treated for injuries. Let's get the latest from that. Reporter in Turkey, in Adana, is Ahmed Kajee. Thank you so much, Ahmed, for your time this morning. What's the latest on Christian Atsu?
Thanks very much, Benjamin. Yes, unfortunately, news coming out of the Hayata region, where unfortunately Christian Atsu has not been found as initially reported. I guess that just goes to show the extremes and the extents that many of the residents of Turkey are going through, that even at times when they feel their loved ones may be found or perhaps even may have been in some way or form, see there is an update on them. That is unfortunately not the case as well. Just to give you some insight as to what we will be also trying to find out is whether there will be any update from the sports department here in Turkey to find out what their updates will be. We do understand that their sports league, at least their football league, has been suspended. There still is no clarity on when that will be resuming, but given the context of what this country and Syria next door to it is facing, it's obviously unclear on when this will continue, especially given the fact that a 3-month state of disaster has been declared by President Erdogan for the affected cities, and obviously that runs over onto the sports fraternity and many other aspects as well. But just to take you through some of the operations that the Gift of the Givers teams will be doing, this is just some of the equipment which will be used, the search and rescue equipment, which will be used throughout the day and heading into the next 10 days or so, when this particular team will wrap up the operations and another one will be coming in. We're expecting around 40 total search and rescue officials from the Gift of the Givers coming through, as well as the search and rescue officials who have also come along on this particular operation. We will be in the area where Christian Atsu has went missing, or at least covered under that rubble in that region. We should be there in about 4 hours or so. That's one of the many areas which is considered ground zero where this particular earthquake had struck, or at least both those earthquakes had struck. And unfortunately, because that 72-hour golden period which we had expected has passed, it's going to be exceptionally difficult for the Gift of the Giver teams and the rescue teams to actually carry out any rescue efforts. Unfortunately, after that 72-hour period, it becomes a search and recovery operation. But just speaking to some of the search and rescue guys and some of the officials over here, they say what they're hoping for is to at least still get some of the survivors from this particular earthquake, the 7.7 and 7.6 magnitude earthquake which hit both Syria and Turkey on Monday morning. So just speaking to that, and to summarize, we will be leaving this particular region in Adana probably in the next hour and a half or so, and then hopefully before midday or just before the early afternoon, we'll then be able to start out operations from that region over there. And hopefully we'll get at least some positive news for Christian Atsu and his family and the Ghanaian football fraternity.
And we will hear from you a little bit later, Ahmed, with regards to that location, because as you mentioned, you are going to exactly where Christian Atsu had been based or is based with his team, Hatay Spor, from that particular city. But I want to touch on the issue of our interest also here in South Africa. Banyana Banyana were scheduled or are still scheduled to travel to Turkiye on Monday to play in a 4-nation tournament there. Is it safe to say that is not going to happen, despite the association here in South Africa not saying a word about it? The last time anything was said about Banyana Banyana and Turkiye was when the squad was announced a few days ago.
Well, in terms of the location of the earthquakes and the epicenter, that took place around 300 kilometers from Istanbul International Airport. So yesterday we took a 2-hour flight 1,000 kilometers away from Istanbul to where we are right now in Adana. And this had an element of impact which came through from those earthquakes. And then another 2 hours from here is where the major epicenter and one of the majorly struck areas has been. So in terms of what's taking place in Istanbul, yes, the airport is perhaps operating at a lower capacity. There are fewer people than you normally would see, and that's understandable given that most flights were cancelled or rescheduled, and many people would have changed their flights coming into the country and leaving the country as well. But if Banyana happened to come into the country, and perhaps if the tournament happens to take place in Istanbul, one would assume that that tournament may continue to will continue, but that will all depend obviously on the Turkish Football Association, the South African Football Association, and what that communication is like as well. There's been no update on this side of town in terms of what we will be expecting on the sporting fraternity and just many other events as well. I guess that's the distance obviously between where the main capital city is and where the issues had taken place. If one had to just put it in a South African context, one would assume that the earthquake would have hit areas near the borders, so something around 2,000 kilometers or 1,500 kilometers from Gauteng would generally be the Messina region, and then the Istanbul region, if one had to perhaps compare it to Johannesburg and the Gauteng region. So that just maybe will give you some insight into the infrastructure that's also in those particular areas, so you can get an idea of something that would normally happen in a capital city compared to the difficulties and the challenges that one would find out in a more remote region such as Hatay, out where Christian Atsu, perhaps the big name coming out of that particular region, and the thousands of others who have been affected and unfortunately would have lost their lives in that particular area as well. Benji.
Ahmed Kajee joining us live from Adana in Turkiye. Thank you so much for your time this morning. Difficult to see how that mini tournament is going to happen or continue for Banyana with the league itself in Turkey having been suspended. No word as yet as to when the resumption is expected to be, as Ahmed alluded to that earlier. Banyana, of course, using that tournament as part of their preparations for the World Cup coming up in New Zealand and Australia starting in July. Well,